Talk a little bit about breath work, because that was another thing that I took a little journey on in the last couple of years. I decided just to go into all the hard places and deal with them.
Well, I'm curious about what type of breath work you've been doing.
Right. So there's lots of different kinds. In fact, after I get off with you here, I have a breath worker that I work with on a continual basis. And so I'm doing some work with her. So I think it's more like holotropic breathing, where you breathe in through your mouth. She has me go like that, breathing in real quick. But here's what happened the very first time I did breath work. So one of the things I've been trying to heal from is a near-death experience that happened to me in my 30s. I swam into a pile of Portuguese man-o-war down in Cabo San Lucas. There was probably 10 or 12 of them wrapped around me. I went into anaphylactic shock, and it's a long story, but I went down the tunnel. I had the life review. I went down the tunnel, and I was stopped from going to the other side. But there was a picture of my husband and my 2 children who were in 1st grade and 3rd grade at the time. And they stopped me from crossing over. And when I came out of that experience, what happened to me was I became even more dysregulated. I became a workaholic. I was like, there must be some reason I was left here. And it was like my nervous system flipped into this frantic place. So I didn't deal with it for 10 plus years, maybe 15 years. So last year I decided to deal with it. And I did it in breath work. And the first time I did this holotropic breathing, I literally had the same physiological experience that I had without the tightening of my throat when I went into these jellyfish. And I remember saying to my breath worker, I was shaking, and I'm like, this is it. This is what I was doing. But what blew me away is that my cells had that memory. For 15 years, they did not let go of that memory until I engaged in breath work and brought it to the surface and was willing to release it.
What a story. I mean, this is, we talk about how trauma gets lodged in your body. There's a signature of trauma. And this near-death experience, it just sounds so devastating. And
it was scary.
And then that conclusion that I think is part of patriarchal culture, that, okay, I was spared, so now I have to really give my gifts to the world, and I have to overfunction going forward. It makes sense that you would feel that way. And that's the way that trauma sometimes can live on in the body, make us overfunction. And so I had a similar experience with holotropic breath work. I went to a medical conference, not a near-death experience, but I went to a medical conference in Las Vegas, and they had a holotropic breathwork tent. And so this was day 3 of being at this conference, and I find Vegas pretty dysregulating. There's the casinos, the smoking, the lights, the drinking, it's horrible. It's horrible. And so I went into this holotropic tent, kind of a dome, and I had a little headache because I was feeling toxic, and I was irritated, and I wanted to fly out that day. And inside of 20 minutes, doing the breath that you described, that completely transformed my system. It got me regulated, and I was hooked. It can create a healing state of consciousness. It can create some of what we're talking about with psychedelics. You can get that with your own physiology. The way that one of my teachers describes it, because I then did it 4 times a week, of course, because I'm an overachiever for the next couple of years. So one of my teachers talks about how you can create your own medicine, just like what you're describing with, having that traumatic experience again. And then being able to work with it using your breath, you're creating your own medicine. And that can make such a difference. So holotropic breath work is a big part of the book because I think it's creating these healing states of consciousness. There's other ways of doing breath work that can do that too, but it's especially valuable. And it's something that Michael Pollan did because he couldn't take MDMA. So his book, How to Change Your Mind, he talks about doing breath work, and it's holotropic breath work.
Yeah. So do you think you can heal yourself from an autoimmune condition?
I absolutely do. So, I tested positive for anti-nuclear antibodies 5 years ago. So I realized, okay, I'm making this weapon. My immune cells are making this weapon, my B cells, against the nucleus of my cells.
Yeah, which is insane.
It's so core, it's so fundamental. And so I didn't have just a little bit, I had really high levels. And so that got me to start to look at, okay, what happens if I start to heal my leaky gut? What happens if I start to work with the trauma that's embedded in my tissues? Mm-hmm. And last year, when I was finishing the book, I tested my anti-nuclear antibodies again, and they were 0.
Amazing.
So I totally believe that you can do that. And I see it all the time with patients that I'm taking care of who've got Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and we implement the protocols that are in the book, and they're able to, get their antibodies way down, sometimes to the normal range.
Amazing.
And it's not with some big medication. It's with, these fundamentals, like the way that you eat, move, your level of embodiment, the way that you have trauma embedded in your system, as well as immunomodulators, things that can tonify the immune system, like vitamin D, curcumin. In the case of Hashimoto's, black cumin. We know that low-dose naltrexone can also be really effective.
Yeah.
So we cover all of that.